It's match day in the Premier League. Arsenal return to action against Nottingham Forest, and Ange Postecoglou is back at the Emirates. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're doing good and well and that your week has been good and you're ready for the weekend. A weekend of Premier League football back, of course, on your screens with Arsenal at home again in their fourth match of the new campaign, looking to get a positive result against Nottingham Forest. And of course, it follows Arsenal's fantastic result with the women yesterday. Brilliant 5-1 victory. And despite the fact that they went 1-0 down again for the second game in a row, but courtesy of an own goal from Daphne Van Domselaar, managed to score 5 in the game. 5-1 victors over West Ham away from home. Freedom Armour, Stina Backstenius, Caitlin Ford and Alessia Russo with 2 late goals as well. But overall, a very, very good day indeed. Yes, Spearmint, it will be a shorter show. You are guessing correctly because it is a very early kickoff, 12:30 in the afternoon, which means I've got to get up there pretty early today, which means I'll be catching a train very shortly. So I won't be here for you forever this morning. But I will be around for the next 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll be going through as much as we can from Mikel Arteta's press conference, looking ahead to our lineups and predictions and scorelines, and then, of course, also looking ahead with your questions. So let's do that, shall we? And let's jump into the chat box and say some mornings. Good morning to Matt G, to Mike, to Claire, to Paul, Black Shine. We've got Mohammed, we've got Sean, we've got Chima. We've got Barry and Mark, we've got Zoom and Brian. I wonder if Barry thinks I'm talking about him whenever I talk about Barry from the Midlands. I hope you don't, Barry. It's not actually you. It's a hypothetical Barry. He doesn't really exist, but he does exist. He's like he's just the colloquial guy that moans about everything. We just call him Barry. It's terribly name phobic, I guess, but I know a fair few Barrys, so that's why we use the name. Right, let's jump to today's stories. Do drop a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let's get into yesterday's press conference, of course, where I was at the Sugar Royalty Training Centre to hear from Mikel Arteta and speak with him regarding the game and, of course, his reaction to a number of topics. And there were some really interesting points. I did a quick summary of that on my Instagram page. I usually do reactions, of course, to that. So if you want to go to my Insta at Tom Canton Media, you can go and watch my quick reaction there. People particularly enjoyed the shoulder shuffle that I apparently did. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but you can go and check that out as well. But on terms of team news, he said Bukayo is still out, and he's trying to get back as quick as possible, but we need to respect that process. William Saliba trained today, being yesterday, Friday, and the rest as usual, and Ben as well. So yeah, William Saliba back in training. Great news, of course, as well. Ben White also involved, another positive for Arsenal. No mention of Norgard, but he was, of course, spotted in training, of course, in midweek. So we expect Norgard potentially to be for the first time in the squad. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But again, positive news regarding team news as well, which is really positive too. Nkapie, of course, being signed. Arteta gave his first press conference since the signing of Nkapie, and he said, well, he's a player that we've monitored for years, and he's become available. Obviously, we had the departure of Jakob as well, and now we needed another player in that position. That could have been great as well, what we had, playing in a different position, playing in a different formation, a player that obviously has a lot of experience already at this age. And so very, very happy to have him. And he said, yeah, he's ready to go. Obviously, he trained only 2 days with us. He had a long travel with the national team, a very successful game at the end against Argentina. But overall, he's available. So Nkapie could make his debut for Arsenal today at the Emirates. We'll have to wait and see if indeed that does happen. Now, there was, of course, talk of Ange Postecoglou's return. He says, I don't know, I can't control that, when asked about, comparing to the start we expected to see from him against Spurs in his tactics. So obviously he's made the decision to go to Forest now, he says, because for sure he believes that with the players that he has, he can do what he wants to do and be successful again. But obviously we had very different expectations. if he would have been the manager, because it was already for a long time very clear what he wanted to do with Ange there, and that the time had come, it would be things that were different for sure. I think he's talking about their kind of the expectations between Spurs and Arsenal, and the fact even that he won a trophy as well, and that led, of course, to him still being sacked, which was quite a dynamic. But he lost 22 games and finished 17th in the league, so that, of course, has to take precedence. He was asked about Edu, and of course, Edu returning to the Emirates for the first time since his departure last year. And he says, I was very happy with Edu. I think Edu did a tremendous job at this club, especially where the club was at the time. And when he joined, he was a big part of that transformation of the football club. And then he decided to leave. And Andrea came in, very different circumstances to the club, and done an incredible job as well. So good. It's not necessary to compare when you have two people at that level that are both so good. Moving on to the Kai Havertz question, because there was more injury stuff which happened later on kind of in the press conference as well. The Kai Havertz question around his fitness, he said, yeah, he's looking really good. I mean, he's working freely. He started to load that knee and start to do some bits, obviously. As I said before, I think it will take him from weeks to months, but knowing Kai, I cannot give you a time scale because I know that what he's trying to do. Same with Gabriel Jesus, so I think he's in a good moment, and it was a very tough decision for him to go and have that procedure done, but I think it was necessary, and I think it was the right decision for the medical team to persuade him to do that. And then Charles Watts, that question was from Alex Howell, BBC, but Charles Watts also asked at the end about Gabriel Jesus and him not being included in the Champions League squad as well, which obviously I think was a little bit of a surprise to all of us trying to work that out. Me and Simon Collins were trying to work out desperately why he wasn't included, but it seems to be because of the injury. He says, well, we had a major surgery that was going to take many, many months. So after discussing that with the medical staff and understanding the schedule that we had when we thought that he could be available, that it would be between December and January, we decided to make that call like we've done in the past with other players. Hopefully we get it wrong and he comes back earlier. But at the moment, the provision was very clear. So there's clearly an expectation that he's going to return to training in December to January, but whether or not he could actually play is another thing. But of course, he can be re-registered for the second half of the season. But they've made the decision not to include him in the first phase, at least, of the competition. There was an interesting point made about David Raya in the press conference as well, which kind of got Arteta's, not backup, but he certainly responded to it emotionally and enthusiastically. He said, David Raya making his 100th appearance in all competitions against Nottingham Forest. He's kept 41 clean sheets, which is nearly 50%, and that's pretty good. And Arteta was like, pretty good? It's the best in the history of the football club. Now, I don't know if that stat is accurate. I was kind of looking back at some of the statistics of David Seaman, I think, and I think he was also 41% when he got to 100 games. So I assume that if this is the metric that we're looking at it after 100 fixtures, what the best in the history of the club was. Well, I think it's very similar. We were doing some maths after the press finished, and it seems that David Seaman also managed to get 41% clean sheets in the Premier League. So if David Raya gets a 42nd clean sheet tomorrow, it would put him ahead of David Seaman at that point. So it's always difficult. We talked about this on yesterday's show with Shane. Like, when he makes these kind of statistical claims, sometimes you're like, is that true? And he just seems to get quite a few of them wrong. But I think this one, it seems correct, doing the maths yesterday. But we'll wait and see. But yeah, he said, okay, it was Ian Abrahams from TalkSport. He says, okay, I'll rephrase the question. Very good. It's very good. And Arteta said, it's unbelievable. And he really went like, it's unbelievable. And I was hammered when I brought him in. So that's perspective as well. Very good to understand the game. And especially when a few months or years go by, it's really good to look back as well and reflect on that. So one of the things that Arteta says at times is that he doesn't read, or he doesn't kind of get exposed to the wider media or comments online or whatever. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, because he makes, and it's not just this. In this press conference, he did two moments as well where he kind of alluded to the rhetoric around. I know I asked him about being too comprehensive in his lineup after the Liverpool game, but there was a question about Mikel Merino as well and his contributions over the course of the international break, and seeing, of course, the 3 goals that he got, he basically said, Mikel has this ability. And then he said, I heard some comments after Liverpool saying that we play with 3 midfielders, defensive midfielders. I think it was the narrative. No. When Mikel has a hat-trick playing as an attacking midfielder, I don't know when he's the last attacking midfielder to score 3 goals. So I think he meant defensive midfielder there, to be fair. So very interesting to learn what the perception is, especially when you lose a football match, how important it is to analyse and understand your players' quality in order to make decisions that are based on what you understand daily, which is very clear as well. So the idea that he doesn't read the narrative or isn't exposed to the narrative or see the narrative, I don't believe that. I just don't. Like, there's no way he isn't aware of what's being said and going on and kind of in the broader context as well. It's so clear that even after the question I asked him after Liverpool, that this narrative of playing just 3 defensive midfielders, which I don't agree with. We didn't play 3 defensive midfielders. Zubimendi is a defensive midfielder. Declan Rice is no longer a 6. He's definitely more of a box-to-box. And Mikel Merino is not a defensive midfielder at all. But even with that said, it was still, for me, a more conservative lineup than I would have liked to have seen in the game. But it was more about the lack of proactive changes in the second half. But we've done Liverpool to death at this point as well. So, yeah, look, it's just, I think there's obviously an element you have to take into account, the fact that English is his second language as well. And I think that obviously does make a difference in some statements and comments, like when he said, attacking midfielder, when he clearly meant defensive midfielder. But it's the statistics that, that are just incorrect on a regular basis. I don't take them too seriously, to be honest. I'm more fussed about what happens on the pitch than anything else. But it's no way that he's not aware of what's going on behind the scenes. There's just not. There's absolutely no way. Just lastly, just on the questions that I asked Arteta yesterday, I went into the presser. I was going into it a couple of days ago with the mindset that I wanted to ask in some kind of, like, not hidden way, but in a way about Gabriel Martinelli and Ødegaard to a lesser extent. And I wanted to ask about players whose levels have kind of dipped somewhat since they've reached peaks. Like, it's not like they've always been bad under Arteta. That's not the case at all. We know that Martinelli and Ødegaard had brilliant rises and reached these peaks of their performance. But like the last season or two, particularly the last 2 for Martinelli, we obviously seen those drops. I didn't say attacking players. The kind of the way in which I angled the question was, and I'll read it to you in full. So I want to ask you a question about coaching. Players in general have changed, evolved, and so has the system over the 5 years that you've been manager. There's discussions at the moment, I think, around some of the players who had real peaks a couple of seasons ago, and perhaps their output has slightly dipped in the last couple of seasons. As a manager, how do you tackle when that happens, where a player's gone through a big rise and maybe their output has then slightly gone down recently? And he said, well, that normally happens, especially with attacking players in relation to what they have provided. But that's a very volatile thing, and you have to recognize that. First of all, you look at yourself. So if you are doing something that is not helping enough of their qualities or get in a position that they can express better or have a better chance to exploit their qualities there, then communicate with them as well. It's something quite normal in football, especially for attacking players that have to create those moments. I think it's very telling that he used the phrase attacking players. Obviously, I think he's fair to bring the point up, and I think it is a lot more volatile with attacking players. They do tend to go through more kind of peaks and troughs, and we've seen that with, Havertz and the like. But it was interesting, I think, when I didn't mention the name of Martinelli or mention the name of Ødegaard, that it was the attacking kind of element that was focused on in his answer. And, the main question I wanted to ask about was overcoaching. This idea of overcoaching, or that the system can be too restrictive on a certain player, and that if your system changes, that those players can get swallowed up. And I was talking with Art before the presser saying, I'm not really sure how to word this. And I was like, maybe I just straight ask the question. Maybe I just ask straight about overcoaching. And that's what I did. I said, is there a fear about overcoaching a player from a manager's point of view? And he said, it can be, yeah. Or coaching them badly. It's like communication on the pitch. I can say, no, I want you guys to coach. Yeah, coach, but coach well, because coaching badly is a terrible thing to do. It's better not to coach than be on mute and coach badly. That's always a line that is very important. So it's clear that he's aware of the idea of overcoaching and, being too present, but at the same time is conscious of, sometimes it's better to say nothing than to coach a player badly or give bad advice, and you'd rather say nothing than give them that bad advice, which sounds obvious. It sounds like a really common sense thing, doesn't it? Is overcoaching a bad thing? But it was more about the idea of the being aware of it and aware that it might have happened or is happening or can happen. And I think, it would be disingenuous to say that it categorically doesn't happen. You can't slip into that. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of element, I think, of Arteta's system and coaching style, of whether or not some players like Martinelli have been swallowed up by the system. But I digress. Right, let's go to part 2, the preview for today's match, right after this. Right, let's go into part 2. Just before I go into the preview, I'm just going to tackle this question from Raf, who says, did we ever get a reason why Dalman was added to the A list of the Champions League squad and not the B list with the English under-21? So this is, the answer isn't necessarily needing to be provided by Arteta. It's just a logistical one. He's actually not old enough to be on the B list. It's like between the ages of 16 and 21, you can be included on the B list, but because he's actually younger than the B list age bracket, he has to be included on the A list if Arsenal want to play him. So that's why. So actually, after January, when he's turned 16 in December, he will be included on the B list. So it's just very strange, the rulings of UEFA competitions, but that is just the way that it works. Right, let's look at the team that I've gone for in today's show. I've gone for some changes. I've gone a little bit maverick with this. I've gone a little bit different. And this is my reason as to why. The reason I've gone for the changes here is because of Tuesday. Now, Tuesday, of course, we'll fly actually on Monday to Bilbao after a training session in the morning. And we've got a week here where the fixtures are starting to build up. The fixtures are starting to get somewhat rough. And I think that, Zubimendi, who at the start of the season had a week where he was obviously not in the best of health going into the game against Man United. He's played these 3 games in a row, and I think it's really important that he plays and starts on Tuesday. And so therefore, I've dropped Declan Rice into this number 6 role. I've put Eze in the left centre. I don't know why Saliba's there, to be fair. He's not meant to be. It's meant to be Mosquera. So forgive me for that. It's definitely meant to be Mosquera in that position. But I've gone with this lineup because I think it's time we start to get comfortable with rotation. It's time we start to get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of making some more changes in the Premier League, particularly at home, when we're going to be more dominant, when we're going to be more important in the game, we're going to have a lot more of the ball. And I think in these types of games, we don't have to have Declan Rice and Zubimendi in the same team. I don't think we need to have both of them in the same team for these games. And it means that we can use players like Eze and Ødegaard in an attacking lineup. And so while I'd rotate some players in midweek as well, I think that we can kind of mix and match the teams for these 2 games and then go full strength against Manchester City. Because the Man City game is also in my mind when I'm thinking about this team. This team is more than good enough to win this game and shouldn't have any problem, really, realistically. With respect to Forest, it shouldn't. But I'd like to see Arteta change the structure of the midfield somewhat. I'd like him to be braver with the midfield selection. I'd like Eze to be used in these left 8 roles that he has done for England successfully in the past as well, and play alongside Ødegaard and in front of Declan Rice. It can be Zubi or Rice, to be fair. I'm not too concerned about that. And Martinelli, for me, going up against a Forest side who I expect, will be attacking, sure, but I think in his first game, Ange may want to just kind of sit in and see if he can nick a result, in which case I think Trossard is better for those types of games than Martinelli is. And Martinelli really did disappoint me against Liverpool. So I've gone with Trossard. But 3 games in a week is a lot. And so I think it's important that we familiarise ourselves and start to become accustomed to making changes in games. So that's what I've gone for. But what are your predictions? Tell me your scorelines. What are you expecting today from the team? While we get, of course, those in, I'll just run you through the lineup player by player, so those listening on audio know exactly what I've gone for. Raya in goal, Timber at right back, Mosquera and Gabriel at the back, Calafiori at left back. I did kind of think about Lewis Skelly for this one as well, and I wouldn't mind seeing that, but maybe Hincapié comes in for the game on Tuesday. Declan Rice at 6, Eza and Ødegaard in the attacking 8s, Madueke on the right, Trossard on the left, and Gyökeres through the middle. So in the chats, George says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Elliot says 3-0. Blackshine says 2-0. Kirill says 3-1. Loga says 3-0. Vala says 3-0. Zoom says 4-2. Matt says 3-0. Temi says 3-0. Barry says 3-0. Oh, Temi's going for a 3-0 defeat. A Wood hat-trick. Gyökeres hat-trick of Howler misses and a late MLS straight red card. The reverse psychology in full swing as usual. Jay's going for a 5-2 Arsenal win. Rob's going 3-0 to the Arsenal. James says 5-0. Sabre says 5-0. Granddaddy Gooner says 3-0. Wong Song Soup says 4-2. Stephen's going for a 4-0 win to the Arsenal, and I'll continue to throw some of these score lines up as we go to part 3. Your questions and more right after this. Right, let's go to a quick part 3, which is going to be your questions over the next 8 minutes. I'm going to try and log this off by past today because I need to catch a train and head out to the Emirates for an early kickoff. But do you know what the best thing about early kickoffs are for me? Let's see if you can tell me what you think that it is. What is the best thing about the early kickoffs at the Emirates? There is a very, very obvious reason why I love an early kickoff at the Emirates. One is definitely that I can get home early. You're right, Kirill. That is a great one. That wasn't what I was thinking of. But yeah, it is indeed the cooked breakfast. Without a doubt. Like it is the thing that you look forward to as a journo covering Arsenal the most is the cooked breakfast. So yeah, without a doubt, I would go with that. Right, let's go to some of your cues. Carl says, Tom and fellow TGT, isn't it great that this season we don't need to specifically worry who we rotate, just specifically the formation and the tactics? And that shows you the quality of depth that, of course, that we have got in that team. And it shows you, the power of that depth as well. So yeah, very, very happy. But yeah, I'm getting home earlier is definitely one of the reasons, as Kirill pointed out, and Oslo saying as well, that is one of the best things about early kickoffs too, as well. And when I've got, when I'm dog sitting as I have been as well, it's very important to get back as early as possible also. But there are people looking after the boy in the day, so I don't need to worry about that too much. Morgana says, Tom, please help me. You say Martinelli has disappointed you, but when was the last good game Trossard played? It's a fair question to ask, and off the top of my head, I would struggle. But that's because I have a memory like a sieve most of the time. But I just feel as though tactically in those low blocks, Trossard suits those games better. I actually thought he was good when he came off the bench against Leeds, thinking about it. I thought he came off the bench against Leeds, moved to that left-hand side. Madueke came off for Dowman in the end. I think he had a decent game against Leeds, did Trossard, to be fair. So I would point to that as a good example. Shano says, if we want to have the best midfield in the league, Rice and Zubimendi need to be joined at the hip. And look, I don't disagree with you, but I do think there are games where we need to be able to rotate, rest, change, and they need to be starting against Man City. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that we need to think about rest, rotation, freshness, and utilising all of our squad as much as we can. Your mate says, what's the menu on an Arsenal breakfast? It's just a traditional English breakfast, which is, we're up there without a doubt with like the top 5, my top 5 meals, and I love Italian food and Spanish food, but a traditional English breakfast for me is like the number 1 British food that there is. Fish and chips are great. Roast dinners are great. A traditional English breakfast, it's really tough to beat that because it's not just about the dish itself, it's about having it in the morning. Because let's be honest, breakfast is the most boring of all the 3 meals, or depending on how many meals you have in a day. But breakfast is the worst one. Like cereals are nice, but they're not great. Like there's other breakfast options, like I really, croissants and continental breakfast stuff, also quite nice. But it is the worst course of the day. So, because you can have some great lunches, you can have amazing dinners, but breakfast, and so the fact that an English breakfast exists completely blows that whole theory out the water. Anyway, we're going on a tangent about food again, as we usually do on the show. And will it be appearing as a slide in tomorrow's show? Probably not, but it might appear in our matchday blogs, of course, which I'm going to be trying to do, of course, throughout the season as well. So look out for the matchday vlog appearing on my Instagram feed tomorrow or this evening, if I manage to get it done this evening, at Tom Canton Media on Instagram. Alex says, what do you think about playing Saka on the left and Madueke on the right? I don't like it, Alex. I would swap them round without hesitation. Aiden says, before the presser, do the Arsenal secret police threaten your knees and your ankles if you ask hard questions? No, they don't. And as we kind of covered on yesterday's show, my experience of being in those press conferences has always been very freeing. I've never felt ever any pressure to ask or to not ask anything. And I know that I have to obviously reiterate this point a lot for the people in the back who sometimes never hear it. But that never happens. So certainly I've never experienced it ever. It's never been something I've never felt uncomfortable asking a question, or I've never felt pressure asking a certain question. Certain times where some difficult questions need to be asked. Think about the questions in the summer that we saw in the tour. Some of them are very difficult questions that needed to be asked, and they were asked. So, it's freedom of the press. Very important indeed. I'm sorry, but I don't agree with you people saying that breakfast is the best meal of the day. I mean, maybe nutritionally and importance for just having your energy. But let's be honest, the actual dishes that you get for a breakfast just don't compare to the other course of the day. Just don't. It's not even worth me debating this point. Nathan says, I have now been rattled by Tom this morning about this breakfast comment. It's the worst course of the day. There's no doubt about it. I'm sorry, but if your favorite meal is a breakfast, I'm sorry, but that's just wild to me. That is wild. How can your favorite meal be a breakfast meal? No. There are some great breakfasts. Shakshuka is a great breakfast, but breakfast is just not the best one. It's just not. I'm sorry. I stand firmly and passionately on this topic. But it just isn't. It's the most important, says Claire, and I've got no debates there. If you want to say it's the most important, I think you've got a good argument. But it's just not the tastiest. And it's so true. So true. Except when you have a traditional English breakfast. In that case, you've got a great argument there. But it's only because that exists, really, that there's any potential semblance of truth in it being that. But no, I'm sorry. We'll do a phone-in show and debate it. Yeah. Jerome says, sorry, Tom, you're wrong on this one with the "you're" spelled incorrectly. I love when people tell me I'm wrong but have a grammatical error. It's just like the most petty, childish school child argument back, but it's always like, gotcha. So come on, Jerome. Let's get that English written correctly. You're so wrong. Spell it correctly from Ait or Alit as well. So do love that. Anyway, of course, that does bring us to the end of today's non-controversial show. Do very much appreciate it. And you listening. Just on yesterday's show as well, I do want to say thanks to Shane for coming on. I'm a little disappointed with some of the comments. I think overall the comments were pretty darn good. And most people understood kind of the context of the conversation. What disappointed me was that some people want this place to be an echo chamber. I don't want that. I really don't want that. I don't want TGT to be a place where you only hear one point of view. I just don't want it. So if you don't want to listen to a show, that's absolutely fine. That's no problem. If you had to switch off yesterday, that's absolutely fine. If you didn't want to tune in, if you didn't want to carry on watching, that's absolutely fine. But don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. I think there's a level of insecurity about that. Telling somebody I had to switch this off, telling somebody I'd never want to see this again, telling somebody never get this person on again. If you want to subscribe to an echo chamber, feel free. I'm sure there are places you can go and get that, but I'm not that. I'm up for hearing different points of view. I'm up for debating different points. If I shut myself off to different points of view, I'm no better for it. So, if you don't want to listen to those types of shows, I haven't got a problem with that. But if you want to desperately tell me that you don't, that's when I've got a bit of a problem with it, because I just don't think you need to tell me. Just don't listen to it. Enact your free will. Enact the fact that you don't want to listen to it, and don't. And then come back tomorrow when we've got normally scheduled programming. It's really as simple as that. And it's not like it happens all the time. It's a very, very small minority of shows that actually does take place. So, it's just don't be so sensitive about that sort of thing. I'm never one for that. It's just You know, it's important to hear the other perspective so that you can either strengthen your own point of view or maybe even have your mind changed. And you maybe even speaking to someone that has no intention of changing their mind. And maybe that was the case. But there was no disrespect in that conversation. There was nothing said untoward about each other. And it was just to talk about footballer difference of opinion. And when that happens between two people, whether their opinions align or not, in my opinion, that's a good thing. You know, it's current affairs right now, the things that are going on in this world, whether, you know, your opinions are powerful things, but people have a right to be able to say their opinion. But as always, I feel there should be consequences for certain opinions, but certainly not some of the things that we've been seeing of late. On top of that, if you're traveling to London today, be safe. London's going to be hectic. Really hectic today. There's so much going on. Obviously, you're probably well aware of the protests that are going on in London today. There's multiple different protests of different kind of motives going on, and kind of conflicting motives as well. So, and there's a lot of football, a lot of football going on today. There's so many London games. So the authorities are going to be spread incredibly thin. So just look after yourselves, stay safe, stay out of trouble. And I very much look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, where we can have a roundup and a discussion. I won't be here. I'll be back at the in-laws looking after the dogs. So I'll try and bring my microphone so the audio is better like it was yesterday. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, stay respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.